A few months ago, Vanessa and I went on a trip to Poland and Slovakia, and the plan was to attend a friend's wedding in Slovakia, but we ended up booking extra time off work, and we took the time to visit Poland as well, and we'd never been to either Poland or Slovakia, so we wanted to visit Krakow, and we also have a friend that lives there, Kate, so yeah, we ended up visiting both countries. This adventure began in my hometown of Lisbon, here in Portugal, and after driving for almost 2 hours from our home to a friend's house in Lisbon and not being able to get any sleep the night before, we hopped on a very early flight and made our way to Warsaw, where we had a short layover before heading out to our final destination for this first part of the trip, which was Krakow. Apart from the airplane footage that you've just watched, I'm afraid that I don't have anything else to show you, but after landing in Krakow, we headed to our Airbnb, dropped our luggage, and we met up later in the day with our friend Kate for drinks. But again, there's no footage, so I guess you'll just have to believe me. Oh, by the way, the cameras that I took with me on this trip were my Fujifilm X-T4. That was the camera that I used to shoot all of my footage, and I also shot a few digital photos with it. And my camera for stills, the main one, was my Bronica ETRS, and I know it's not the smallest or the lightest camera, but I wanted to shoot everything in 120 in this trip, so yeah, those were the cameras that I took with me on the trip. We wanted to visit a few places in Poland, and I honestly gave it some thought and consideration on whether I should show these first two locations or not, but these first locations are the Auschwitz and the Birkenau concentration camps. Although I was allowed to film and shoot in there, I decided not to get any footage out of respect and because I wanted to be in the moment. Like I'd always wanted to visit both locations, so I just decided to get some stills with my Bronica, and yeah, there's not much else to say. I'm gonna show you those photos now. The next day, we woke up early in the morning and we decided to start exploring Krakow, and it was super humid and hot. This was late August, and there's a lot of smog and pollution in Krakow, so it was really sticky and yucky. So the whole carrying around my Bronica thing and my Fuji, and my backpack and everything, it was bad as it was, but with the temperature and the humidity, it was just like the icing on the cake. So this first image was quite an interesting one to capture. I thought this was a cool scene and wanted to capture the restaurant's entrance in the middle of the frame, and there was a lady hanging up her clothes on the balcony just above it, and a guy popped up right next to her, saw me taking the photo and hid behind the clothes that the lady was hanging. And like in the final image you can see the guy like hiding behind the clothes, and like he was avoiding me at all costs, like as soon as he saw the camera. And I didn't get them in the photo, but as you can see in the footage, there was also a couple that was walking across the frame and they just looked right. And I was just there pointing my Bronica at them. So they just stopped in the middle of the frame and they looked a bit confused. They were just like staring. But again, they didn't make it to the final image, but I just thought that it was funny because this was literally my first photo in Krakow. Just a few steps ahead from this scene, we ran into this building that was like covered in leaves, and I thought that this scene was just way too good to not take a photo of, so guess what? I also really like this shot of this woman selling flowers on the sidewalk, and like the whole scene looked great and really colorful, so obviously I had to take a photo of it. Later that day, we headed out to the riverside, we rode scooters, I took a few more photos, and I was able to capture a few shots of this cool looking brutalist architecture building that I'd previously seen online, and I was quite keen on shooting during this trip, to be honest, and I think these pictures turned out okay, and I think I really like the juxtaposition of color with the grey and heavy looking concrete building against the colorful carnival rides that were there on the sidewalk, and I also really enjoyed this portrait of Vanessa. Later in the afternoon, we then met up with our friend Kate after she was finished with work, and we decided to head down to the Wawel Castle, and this location was quite close to the area where we'd been at during the afternoon, so we didn't walk that much there, which was good. This place honestly looked insanely good for color film, but it was getting late and clouds were coming in, so I just said, yeah, screw it. I'm gonna load some Fomapan 400, which in hindsight wasn't the best decision, but it was the safest one, and I'm not gonna lie, I really like the shots that I got, and I'm happy that I shot scenes of Krakow in black and white, otherwise I would only have shot color, and the views that you have when you're up there in the castle are crazy. Like, it's the same but different because it's a different perspective, you're way higher and everything just looks different. I think you get me. I was able to grab a couple of interesting shots from the streets behind the castle, from the people walking down in the river's walk where we'd been earlier in the afternoon, and I was also able to capture this photo of Vanessa and Kate, which I really like for the fact that it was quite candid, because even though they're looking at the camera, I literally asked them to look at me like then and there, and I took the photo, and this was also the last photo of this roll. The next couple of days honestly are a bit of a blur in my head, because I remember that we walked a lot and we drank a lot, we ate a lot, and we were just basically enjoying the city and like enjoying the last days we had in Krakow before heading down to Slovakia. We did, however, visit the Wieliczka salt mine, and this was when I shot with my Fuji for convenience sake, and in order to get down to the mine's first level, you have to walk 800 steps and basically hope that no one trips, otherwise you're basically screwed. And anyway, this place looked absolutely beautiful, particularly this big hall, as it gives out like Ministry of Magic vibes from the Harry Potter movies. And honestly, there were a few creepy locations and statues, but we made it out alive. And yeah, I'm here. So on our last day in Krakow, we basically woke up early, grabbed breakfasts, we got an Uber to the other side of Krakow, rented the car, and we just decided to head down to Slovakia. So this is basically the end of the first part of the trip. So yeah, no more Krakow, we're gonna go to Slovakia. Driving down to Slovakia was incredible as the day was super clear, the roads were great, and the scenery was absolutely beautiful. And I want to give a shout out to Vanessa for grabbing so much footage throughout this second part of the trip, because otherwise this video would be pretty boring, and because I was driving, I would have missed out on so much of the landscape and the scenery that I got to rewatch now that I'm editing this video. So thank you so much. The sun was about to set at one point and we were driving down this massive stretch of road, and all of a sudden we saw a gigantic group of mountains in the distance, and obviously, me being me, I was getting super hyped to try and stop the car to grab some photos. So guess what? Unfortunately, I was shooting handheld and I had Gold 200 loaded in the Bronica, so I was struggling a bit with lights, which was disappearing quite fast, so these were the best shots that I could take at the time. And later that day, we've arrived at the Airbnb, which was in the middle of nowhere, and the next day we attended our friend's wedding. There's no video from this day, because again, it was their wedding, but what I can say is that we ate a lot, we drank a lot, like a lot, and I managed to leave the house early that morning. Vanessa was still in bed, and I just got in the car and went for like a quick photo shoot around the area. So I'm gonna show you some of the photos that I got that day. When I left the house early in the morning, it was super sunny. Like there were some clouds, but they were like really tiny. So again, super sunny. I got back to our Airbnb and this massive storm popped up out of nowhere, and it was just pouring, like proper pouring, and we were like, oh my god, we're gonna go to Anna's wedding and it's gonna be raining so much. But whilst we were waiting at the Airbnb's like door, I grabbed the Veronica because the door was like covered on top, so it wasn't raining. Like there was this tiny area where it wasn't raining, so I was just outside, and this was crazy because we were in someone's backyard, and then they had their neighbor's backyard in front of the house, and just across from it there was this train track, and trains kept going by every like 10 or 15 minutes. So I had to take some photos with like the backyard, the greenery, and the train. I just thought it looked cool because the train was literally going by in their backyard, so I got these images. At this point in the trip, we were exhausted and the wedding definitely hit us hard. However, obviously, we could not let go of the opportunity to explore this new area, and the next day we decided to visit an Iron Age settlement that sat on top of like a hill overlooking the massive lake where we'd been the previous day because the wedding reception was there. And after almost dying from lack of oxygen going up the hill, I finally put myself together and shot a few frames from various old buildings from the settlement, the surrounding areas, and like the whole time I was just in awe at all the greenery, mountain and lake views. Like everything just looked absolutely stunning. On our way down to the car, we decided to walk down a bit further to the lake's margin, and in here I made some of my favorite images from the whole trip. And the sun was setting down, the lighting was perfect, the overall vibe of this place was incredible, and around us there were a few people enjoying the scenery, and there were people swimming and paddling in the lake, which definitely looked awesome against the golden hour lights. And remember what I said about making some of my favorite images at this spot? Well, someone flew a seaplane when I was making these shots, leaving me with literally just a few seconds to measure the lights with my phone and compose my shots. But I really like both photos, but especially this one because I was able to frame the plane aligned with the rising moon right under it, and I'm just over the moon, pun intended, with these shots. And this was definitely a perfect ending for honestly a perfect day. Whilst at the wedding, we sat next to a couple and we were talking about our trip, and because the guy was from Slovakia, he actually recommended us to visit the High Tatras. It's like a really massive mountain range in Slovakia, and we were like, why not? So the next day we decided to head out there, and like, spoiler alert, we weren't able to get to the peak of the, obviously we would never go to the peak because they're like gigantic AF, but we were planning on visiting some mountain lakes that sit like super high in the mountains. But as I was trying to drive up there, the road was closed because you need like a special access thing to go up those roads. So we had to figure out a plan B. After having a look on Google Maps, I saw a lake area that looked promising, so we drove there, and oh my god, were we in for a treat. This location was super photogenic, and there were a bunch of cool looking hotels and villas around the lake. And we've read that the lake freezes during the winter and that people actually use it to go ice skating, so it must be incredible to just take photos there during the winter. Sadly, I didn't shoot a lot of footage here because I was a bit fed up of always having to switch around cameras, and we just decided to walk and just have a chill time around the lake area, enjoy our time there. But I did get some photos though. After leaving this location, we decided to visit another location that we'd found and there it looked interesting. And this was basically a big ass ski resort, but it was August, so obviously no snow. And after parking our car, we got in the cable car and I shot a few photos on our way up and also on the way down. So I'm just gonna show those now. We got to the top and made our way to a very interesting looking viewpoint and walked through this really cool treetop walk, which goes right through the forest, and it's so high up that you can literally touch the top of the trees below, which was super cool. And after we made our way up the structure, we were rewarded with this incredible light and a view of the mountains and the forest in the distance. It was windy AF. But it was totally worth it, and I still cannot quite fathom how beautiful all of those landscapes are. Like, I just cannot. After leaving this ski resort, we basically drove for like 10 minute stops. I think it was less than 10 minutes. And like, I don't know, I just saw this massive abandoned wooden structure like on the side of the road. I just had to stop and take photos of it. On the way down to Zakopane, I had a roll of Lomography 800 loaded in the Bronica, and we drove past a bunch of locations that were just too good not to be photographed, so naturally, your boy had to stop the car and take some photos. The view at this location was insane, and although I was running out of light, I still tried making the best out of the situation, and I grabbed these shots of the mountains, the greenery, and another portrait of Vanessa because why not? This route was super scenic, and although it was getting quite dark down in the valley where we were driving, you could still see the sunlight peeking through the mountains, and I just wanted to reach a good enough of a location where I could just take some golden light shots. And again, I cannot thank Vanessa enough for getting all of this footage because I would not have been able to document this part of the trip if it wasn't for her. So thank you again. We were driving up and down this mountain road and found ourselves behind this buzz, and there was just something about the lights, the trees surrounding us on both sides of the road, and like the taillights on the buzz that just made the whole thing look super cinematic. And I had to ask Vanessa to film as much of it as she could, and oh boy, was it worth it. We were roughly 5 minutes away from our final destination in Zakopane when I was finally able to park the car and take photos of the golden lights and photos of the mountains. Like this location had the most beautiful lights, and honestly the footage that I got and the photos don't do it any justice because the view was just surreal. Later that day, we grabbed food at a really nice vegan restaurant in Zakopane. We went to the Airbnb, spent the night, and when we woke up in the morning, I didn't get any footage. However, I had a few shots left on my Lomo 800 roll from the previous day, so I decided to grab these shots from the balcony, and I love like the subdued lights. I love the triangular shaped roofs of the houses. I love the color of the houses. It just looked beautiful. Sadly, this was our last day of the trip, and we had to head back up to Krakow because we were gonna fly back from Krakow back to Lisbon, and we were gonna spend the night at our friend's skate place. But before actually getting into Krakow's town center, I had to visit a location that I'd found on Google Maps, which was basically this train station that has a bunch of like abandoned trains, and it looked quite promising online. And although it was raining and there were a bunch of like train station workers around, I don't know, like workers, I think they were doing construction work or something like that, I was able to sneak around and I took these photos, which again aren't amazing, but I think they're cool. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll definitely try and create more long format content videos in the future because these are the kind of videos that I like to watch, and I know that it's not for everyone's taste, especially nowadays that everyone just wants to watch like Reels or TikToks, but this is the kind of content that I love watching from other creators, so I'll definitely try to create more long format videos in the future, and that's it. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.